Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kim Cherrick, and I work for the US EPA here in Region 4, located in Atlanta. I'm a physical scientist in the Land Chemicals and Redevelopment Division, and my priorities are in sustainable materials management and strengthening the recycling infrastructure in the Southeast. I'd like to introduce you now to Cesar Zapata. He's the director of the Land Chemicals and Redevelopment Division in Region 4 at EPA. Cesar has over 25 years of environmental protection experience in several environmental programs. Since 2019, he's been leading the Land Chemicals and Redevelopment Division. Cesar supports and represents the EPA in international environmental assistance projects as part of the U.S. government environmental obligations under the free trade agreements. Cesar has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez campus, and postgrad coursework in environmental and civil engineering at The Ohio State University. Cesar?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. And hopefully you can see me now. So hello everyone, and I'm honored to participate in this webinar today. And I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present new information about EPA's recycling program. Right now, it is an exciting time for EPA. Tomorrow will be our 50th anniversary. So we will be celebrating our successes. These successes have been possible not only by the work of all the staff in the agency, but also with our state partners and partners like yourselves that have helped advance our mission to protect the human health and environment. So thank you for your support during this last 50 years. Also, the National America Recycles Fair and Summit were held last month, and I hope that most of you were able to attend and get great information during that program. The fair was an opportunity to see 42 vendors that are offering innovative recycling technologies in a virtual exhibit town hall. The summit contact and the innovation fair exhibits are available online for free until December 17th. So you can go back and see the program as happened if you could not have attended personally. You can view the exhibitors' virtual room and watch inspiring videos from exhibitors such as Brightmark, who is participating in this webinar today. The EPA's American Recycle Summit featured our administrator, Andrew Wheeler, and he made a big announcement and a very significant new goal. Because recycling rates have been essentially flat for the last 2 decades, the EPA is setting a new goal of increasing recycling rates by 50% by 2030. This also will be known as 50 by 30. This goal will help EPA stakeholders and the public see how the country is managing materials more sustainably. We also hope that the goal will help governments make necessary changes to implement the collection and sorting systems and help industry determine the supply of available materials and make investment decisions. In addition, Administrator Wheeler provided an overview of our draft national recycling strategy. The strategy identifies strategic objectives and actions needed to create a stronger, more resilient, and cost-effective U.S. municipal solid waste and recycling system. And finally, at the America Recycle Summit, 3 objectives were announced. They are reducing contamination in the recycling stream, increasing process efficiency, and strengthening markets for recycled materials. This is an opportunity to provide comments on the National Recycling Strategy. This is the last week to provide those public comments. So please, if you have a chance, go to our website and provide your comments on the National Recycling Strategy. EPA realizes the importance and value of your input on the strategy, so we encourage you to provide comments. We anticipate that it may take until the spring to have a final strategy. We will also be developing a recycling roadmap for the implementation of the strategy and anticipate rolling it out in September of 2021. The roadmap will identify the progress on meeting these 3 objectives that I mentioned before. So thank you for giving me this opportunity today to let you know about our new national recycling strategy and related objectives. I hope you have a successful webinar and panel today, and that you have a great afternoon. Now I will pass it on to Gloria, which I think it will follow me with the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Cesar, for those comments. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gloria Hardigree, Executive Director of the Georgia Recycling Coalition, and you will only be hearing my voice as the moderator today. GRC has been involved in organics recycling for almost 2 decades, incorporating the work of the previous Georgia Compost Association. The organization's focus has included compost operator training, involvement in amending state rules governing compost operations, and facilitation of International Compost Awareness Week annually for over a decade. In recent years, GRC partnered with EPA Region 4 and Food Well Alliance to contribute to a white paper on community-based composting, as well as facilitating an EPA grant to deliver a grassroots education and outreach campaign and development of a community compost council for Metro Atlanta. We remain committed to assuring the compost infrastructure grows in our state at the large-scale manufacturing and community-based levels, with goals to abate climate change and replenish depleted soils, create and sustain jobs, and contribute to local food security. So with that, we're delighted to be partnering with EPA today, and we're going to move right into the content. I'm going to introduce you to our first speaker. Natasha Dyer is the Senior Recycling Program Coordinator for the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office of Resilience. She focuses on creating municipal programs that increase wasted food diversion from landfills as part of the city's climate action plan. This includes programs that recover edible surplus food to feed food insecure residents and collaborating with external partners to create decentralized composting systems that benefit local urban agriculture. She also has a very successful sustainability ambassador leadership program that graduates just under 100 participants per year. So she's creating the leaders of tomorrow. With that, take it away, Natasha.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? That seems to be the common question. Good. Let's see. I'm gonna try to manipulate the screen. Okay, it's working. Great, so nice to be here with you all today, GRC and EPA. Thank you for inviting me to participate with you on this organics recycling webinar. And thanks for that introduction, Gloria. I'm gonna go ahead and discuss what we're doing around the city about recycling as a municipality around organic waste and what we're kind of seeing that some of our external partners are creating through the community-based composting council we belong to. And so I thought I would start off with the state regs that have been updated just recently in the last couple of years to illustrate the landscape of community composting in the region and how it has become more accessible and easier to do. So to be a community composter, you will always have had to agree to process less than 500 tons per month of organic waste as not to fall into the solid waste bracket, then requiring a composter to have a solid waste permit if they collect more than that. And before 2018, at least 25% of the organic waste you process had to come from on-site, from your own farm or garden. But now with the update to the regulations, now the entire amount of organic waste, up to less than that 500 tons per month, can come from off-site, now making a lot of this work possible, as you will see further in the presentation. So once a site decides to accept off-site food scraps, it is as simple as filling out a permit by rule form that they submit to the state, and then posting a sign at the urban farm or garden that says what materials or feedstocks can be accepted at the site, and then who the emergency contact is should anything go wrong. According to the Atlanta Regional Commission, within the 5 metro Atlanta counties, there are 52 urban farms and 402 community gardens, with some of what is grown from these sites making its way into 63 farmers markets. And with hiring the first urban ag director in the nation in 2015, the city of Atlanta is proud to now have 10 community gardens that we call Grows a Lot sites, and one really large 7.1 acre garden that we call a food forest now in that portfolio. With all of this local food growing and awareness, not just by farmers, but by the general public of the importance of compost, whether that's the environmental benefits of keeping food out of landfills or the benefits compost has on soil health and increased nutrient value in plants and the foods we eat, the desire to create more compost locally is having a real time right now. I like to tell people as a recycling coordinator, if people aren't asking me about glass when they find out I work on recycling at a party, they want to know about compost. Where can they take their compost and why isn't the city composting? So externally, our waste team is on the steering committee for the Atlanta Community-Based Composting Council, a body made up of urban farmers, composters, waste haulers, trade associations, environmental groups, and local, state, and national government employees who all want to see awareness, training, and policies expanded to support local decentralized composting. With only about 15 of the urban farms and gardens in the city accepting food scraps from off-site, and the new regulations that I mentioned above that have just eased some of this up, our council has just begun to ramp up getting the word out about community-based composting, hoping to generate more interest around it and showing those sites that are interested how to go through the process of officially being registered with the state by filling out that permit by rule. And the council just in the last couple of months has started to circulate a digital survey to urban farms to gauge this interest and to see if we can't get more local farms creating more compost. So in the next few slides, I'll show you a couple of programs that are under my purview with the City of Atlanta. And then later on, I will show you how some of our partners in the council are handling localized food scrap collection and composting at their sites. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a 7.1 acre urban garden called the Food Forest, where we have been working on a community food scrap drop-off for the last year and a half. And currently we have 5 families participating, and these are just local residents of the neighborhood who bring in their scraps every week. And basically they go through a little training that lets them know what to put into the cart, and then after they put in their food scraps into that cart, in that second little thumbnail there, that first thumbnail, they're taught that they also need to scoop some carbon in or put some leaves or whatever's there at the side of the cart to actually put 2 parts carbon into their 1 part nitrogen. So basically, so that vermin don't come around and you're kind of sucking up some of that water that's coming off that food that they've just put in there. And then there's also a padlock so that it doesn't get confused for just a regular trash can for people that are visiting the farm at the time. So this is the process they go through to participate to drop off food at the food scraps, at the food forest that is then processed in the 3-bin system that's right there. And this is just the signage that's on the cart so that the community knows what they can and can't put on. Those are those 2 signs that you see on the cart there to the left. And like I said, go down. Oh yeah, that just shows them what they can and can't put in, obviously, into the cart. And that's our household version. And so now we're currently expanding this location at the food forest to include a commercial component, as we are just going into partnership with a local food recovery organization called Gooder that is wanting to expand and become a total food waste management solution for large food waste generators. So a little bit about Gooder. Gooder is a for-profit food recovery company that works with restaurants, convention centers, stadiums, and the like to get surplus food to communities that need it. They use an app with an Uber technology that allows these large food surplus generators to load in their menus, and on days that they have surplus, they just go into the app, designate quantities that they need to be picked up, and Gooder sends a driver ensuring safe delivery of surplus food from businesses that have it to the people in our communities that need it. This includes deliveries to nonprofits, and very lovingly with what we're going through with COVID, you can see them now delivering directly to senior citizens that are immobile. So that's really great and amazing, I think. Their IRS compliant platform coordinates and tracks the collection and distribution of food donations, allowing their customers to access tax benefits. And the monthly reports they create for their clients also shows clients their waste in numbers to try to help guide them into making new habits on spending to create reduction in the company's food waste. So that's their front end, and now they're moving into, they want to become, they also, like I said, a full food waste solution. They also now want to work on food scraps at companies that have food scraps. So that's restaurants, and that's also any kind of food that's spoiled in grocery stores. And so that's getting food at the front end, like I was mentioning, that's still edible to feed people, and also processing these scraps and discards, like I was saying. So they're processing, we've only been at this for about a month or two, and they're processing anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 pounds per month, or 8 to 14 of those carts you saw me standing by earlier. Creating a win-win situation. And so far, the product that's coming off of it is beautiful. I really just wish I had some pictures. So without those regulations being eased up earlier, allowing increased quantities of green waste to come from off-site, we wouldn't be here today creating this great quantity of rich, good compost for our farm, and for free, freeing up some money for the city that we don't have to figure out where we're going to get compost from. They get to process their food waste, and we get to get rich, beautiful compost for this lovely farm here. And so helping to elevate our work in food waste and local composting is just being accepted into the Natural Resources Defense Council's 18-month Food Matters Southeast Regional Initiative. And so after having worked with the NRDC more indirectly over the last 2 years to map where the city of Atlanta's wasted food was coming in the commercial sector, we're now going to be part of a 4-city cohort, and that's with Asheville, Nashville, Memphis, and Orlando, to increase efforts around wasted food diversion from landfill together as a region, so that we might create more local and community solutions to food waste. And so that's trying to feed people, but that's also trying to create more solutions for just local based community-based composting solutions. And what's beneficial about being a part of this this cohort is that cities often confront similar barriers when tackling food waste, and it's just going to be great to learn from one another's separate experiences over the next year and a half, and to leverage our shared experiences and successes to improve food waste as a Southeast region. So just right off the top, this will provide us with, oh no, what happened? What happened? I think I might have gone down too far. Here we go. So just right off the top, I can just hop right in here. Oops, let's see. Sorry about that. So just right off the top, this is going to provide us with some funding to produce educational signage that we need about the community compost, that food forest, in the last couple slides. And it's going to help us to build an actual station for the drop-off cart system that you saw on the above slide too, just to kind of create some more visibility of about what community compost is. So that's really going to help us in the next coming months too, to kind of build out more of our community composting. And so I can go down. Try to scroll. Okay, so in the following slides, I'm going to show you how some of our partners in the council are handling localized food scrap collection and composting at their sites. This is not city work at this point. Let me see, let me scroll. Okay, it's hard to catch. Okay, so you may know Rashid Nouri's Truly Living Well is an urban organic farm in Atlanta's College Town neighborhood that has been providing a dependable and consistent source of fresh produce for communities that need it since 2006. By regularly harvesting healthy produce throughout the year, Truly Living Well provides the community with a dependable, consistent source of fresh produce, much of which can be earmarked specifically for those who cannot afford to purchase it otherwise. He's also has programming that offers education and job creation around gardening and urban grower boot camp classes. So from what used to be a pretty large compost heap of organic waste that they were generating there at the farm, that they got a bobcat out every once in a while to turn, they have now graduated within the last year or so to accepting food scraps from not only the residents around the farm, but also themselves, creating a commercial component where they are accepting back of house food scraps from 3 restaurants from the local municipal market at Sweet Auburn. They told me recently that they're receiving 3 drop-offs a week of about 100 to 250 pound, I guess, trash receptacles that's now to be processed. And this, sorry, scroll. this, and their new 9 bay system that was funded by a grant from the EPA. So in these 9 bays, there are 2 uncovered bays that continue to accept scraps and are manually pitchforked as working piles. Right next to that is another uncovered bay for carbon that is being dropped off by 3 landscaping companies who are happy to be donating and have no waste processing tipping fees. There are also 3 covered bays for which they will be constructing aerated static piles and currently looking into powering all of this by adding solar from a local partner. Then there are the 3 bays for finished compost that you can't see in this slide. Let's see. There's also a 3-bin system on the site for the residential drop-off and an area to the side of the bays that gets incorporated into the system. So a vision of the organization that leads our community-based composting council, Foodwell Alliance, is to see this very large community-based composting site be made into a permanent center for compost demonstrations. So that would be like tours for local governments across the region who need to see decentralized composting systems at their best, because it's all there. They've got 3-bin systems. They're going to have some aerated static piles soon, and they've got the community engagement around composting and growing local food. So it's really a hub for just seeing how urban ag and composting can provide residential solutions as well as commercial solutions. And lastly, how could we not talk about our favorite charm? Let's see if I can get this to scroll down. I'm having the worst time. It was working. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, there we go. Lastly, so another localized solution for a large composter is the union between Atlanta's Charm and Compost Now. And so Charm, as you probably know, I'm not sure who's on the call, is our Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, and it's privately owned business that is on city property. So we work symbiotically by having our residential customers being able to drop off regular things that can't be processed, and the city's single stream like glass, e-waste, mattresses, paints, and tires. But they also take regular recycled materials as well. And so to encourage new participation in composting and to greatly reduce individual pickups by the hauler, Compost Now, residents can now bring their food scraps when dropping off recyclables and save $10 off the monthly door-to-door service that they receive from Compost Now. So this is another kind of, I think, win-win solution for consumers, but also for the environment, because this is now Compost Now not having to drive around and go to so many doors and having so many trucks on the road. And so those are environmental benefits that I think that pay off. So I think that's it for me.
Okay, Gloria, looks like we're gonna just move right on to the next panelist. Hi, can you hear me? Great.
Yeah, so you want me to go ahead and start?
Go ahead, you're all set.
All right, great. So thank you, everybody, and thanks, of course, to GRC and EPA for putting this together. I'm Jim Davis, Vice President of Strategic Development for Atlas Organics. We are a South Carolina-based company dealing with various feedstocks in various markets. We were asked to kind of talk a little bit about our feedstocks, a little bit about technology, some of our BMPs, and then the effects of COVID on our business. So I will do my best to bring us along. Let's see here. Great. So who is Atlas Organics? Atlas Organics, we exist because we believe that people can and should contribute to something greater than themselves. I really appreciated the previous presentation. A lot of really great things going on in Atlanta. So hats off to you guys. We recycle organic waste. We make high quality compost. What we really are trying to do is figure out how to keep that waste out of, it says divert, but it's diverting organic waste from landfills. So we have commercial services, we offer residential services, and we actually also offer industrial services for collecting that and keeping it out of the landfill. We also, a big part of our model as a company is that we seek partnerships in that where we can develop and operate compost facilities. So a little bit about our feedstocks. Quite simply, we currently work with yard waste, food waste, and biosolids. Each one of our facilities is a little bit of a different animal as we've grown, so I'm happy to be able to kind of walk through that with you. Our first facility that was opened about 5 years ago is in Greenville, South Carolina. It's a public-private partnership with the county solid waste in Greenville County, South Carolina. At this facility, we work with food waste and yard waste. The capacity at this facility is our smallest, our first and our smallest. So we can handle 12,000 tons per year. We are generating an STA certified compost from that facility. Great. Our second facility is located in Durham, North Carolina. Again, this is a public-private partnership with the city of Durham Solid Waste and with the water department. Excuse me. And so this is a little bit of a different animal. When we first opened this facility, it was purely a yard waste facility. We knew that we were going to eventually have a phase 2. So we physically were located in two different areas within the same sort of greater footprint. It's a closed landfill in Durham, North Carolina. And so for the first about a year and a half, 2 years, we were operating the yard waste facility, making compost strictly from the yard waste that was being generated and coming in, and we're actually the processor of that. So we were grinding it up and composting it and sending it out to local, a lot of landscaping, a lot of local farms, things like that. At the beginning, about the second, third month of this year, we began accepting biosolids from the water department. Again, sort of like a phase 2. And so we were able to start working with them, start processing the biosolids that were being generated by the city. And you can see right there, we're up, it really did amplify significantly the amount of waste that we were generating or processing in this one facility. So what we're creating there is a Class A EQ biosolids compost, which is also certified through the U.S. Composting Council. Oops, got ahead of myself. So the most recent project that we have under that we are operating and managing is in Indian River County, Florida. Vero Beach is the town there. This is, as you can tell, our largest facility to date. The capacity there is at 175,000 tons per year. It's on a 20-acre site. Again, like I mentioned, our different projects kind of have different aspects to them. This is an interesting one in that we started working. We're the operators, so we are taking in all the waste that's coming through the county. We are on their property where we are processing the waste for them. But then what we have is that if you, in this slide in particular, if you look right over Indian River County, we have a private facility on that other side. So we are operating a public-private in a sense in that we are contracted with the county to process. Right now, it's about 85,000 tons per year of yard waste, but then we're taking over to our facility, so it becomes our product. And we are creating a STA certified compost and very close to our OMRI, having an OMRI listed product at this facility as well. The big news for January of 2021 is that we have won a contract with the city of San Antonio, Texas, earlier this year. This, again, a little bit of a different opportunity again, is that this will be the first time that we will be operating and working with curbside commingled yard waste and food waste in addition to just regular food waste. You see there, it's 125,000 tons per year. It's on a 20-acre site. This is a true public-private. We're operating on the city of San Antonio property, and we will be creating an STA certified compost. So a real quick overview of where we are. We're growing, as you can tell. So all of this activity has happened within the past 5 years, and we continue to try and be a solution for like-minded municipalities who are seeking solutions. So also want to talk a little bit about some of the technology that we have begun to implement with in our different facilities, and some of them have this technology and some of them do not. So hopefully as we grow, we'll be able to continue to implement technology. Probably just the very simple ones are our facilities operate extended aerated static pile type composting. So we have less turning, but we are able to, of course, when you're making compost, you're always making sure that your temperatures are being monitored. You can't go too low, too high. You have to meet regulations for pathogen reduction and things like that. So it's been kind of a nice advance for us, is that we now have the ability to monitor our piles at not all of our facilities, but several of our facilities remotely. And then also with remote temperature monitoring, you also have the ability to turn on and off blowers, which essentially help you control those temperatures. So that too is another technology that we've implemented. And then we are experimenting with solar panels. So we are working with solar panels on units to actually drive some of the other technology and some of the watering systems, monitoring systems, things like that. So we continue to seek good solutions to make hopefully things more efficient and work for us from a technology standpoint. Best management practices. It's as we grow, I will say that I came on board about 4.5 years ago. We're still a very small company. There were about 8 of us. We were up to, I believe, 50. I think it's like 52 prior to San Antonio coming on. So really growing quickly. Best management practices is a big part of what we try to cover across the boards. One thing I will say is that we are seeking, as we grow and as we're obviously making a lot of capital investment in equipment and things like that, we are really trying to move over to as much electric as we can versus obviously fossil fuel. I'm not going to say that we don't use some of those, we don't use equipment that has regular fuel, but we are making a very deliberate effort to seek other ways to find electricity as a solution. We mentioned EASP, that's an extended aerated static pile versus windrow. So essentially a very quick primer for, I'm sure most of you know about composting, but in EASP, you set the compost in, it cures out, reaches pathogen reduction, and then you move it. So you turn it really, you mix it, that's turned, you move it after its first pathogen reduction phase after about 3 or 4 days. And that gets turned again, and then it sits for about 40 some days until it's compost. But basically, instead of having windrow turners and constantly turning to get the oxygenation, the static piles we force air into those piles. So anyway, that's one of the best management practices we operate with as far as making compost. Company culture, you probably heard when I explained a little bit about what we believe, that everybody's got an ability and an obligation to do something great. That really goes across. We try to instill that in everyone that joins our team, goes through culture decks. We talk about who we are. We have open communication. Literally, everybody is up for, you're always open to make comments. You're always open to make suggestions. We have a lot of discussion about how to make our company a better company. It's very exciting to be a part of something that fresh and that forward thinking. And of course, project development. Whenever we're looking at projects, this is sort of the heart of what we are now. Atlas Organics is really looking at how can we make a difference on a larger scale. So hopefully I've been able to demonstrate a little bit of that sort of project development mindset in a way that that we have to do something about the waste situations that we're seeing from the smaller scale all the way to as large a scale as we can go, really. COVID impact, boy, have we all been hit by COVID. I would say that from a management side, we established a COVID task force. I mentioned that we have, you know, a fairly large hauling unit, a lot of people working in our different facilities. So making sure that we were trying to make sure PPEs and all those kind of things were in place, obviously is a big part of it. So COVID task force, we still have that going on, but that's been implemented for a while. Everybody's remote working. We have an office in downtown Spartanburg, South Carolina, which some people go into but not as much as we used to, and hopefully we will be able to get back to that soon. From an operation standpoint, in one of our facilities, of course, our first facility, we do a lot of food waste that we pick up. So we have a hauling unit associated with that. We pick up the food waste. There's less food waste now because less people are getting together. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the hauling operations, just keeping those guys safe. They're out. We're attempting to keep them as safe as possible as far as direct contact with other folks. And it's gone very, very well. We've had very, very minimal issue at all. So, but it has been an impact, and you know, extra precautions have been put in place. So with that said, I hope I was short enough. I appreciate your time very, very much.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Jim. And sorry we got a little bit sideways on the audio technology there for your introduction, but we appreciate your participation. And next, I'd like to introduce to you Rhett Marlow. He's the Vice President of Strategic Accounts for Cowart Mulch. Among other duties, Rhett's focus is to increase the volume of feedstock into their compost manufacturing process while expanding the current operational footprint. Rhett worked with the Green Sports Alliance and Mercedes-Benz Stadium here in Atlanta, Georgia, to compost the food waste from their 28th summit in Atlanta and participated as a panelist on one of their discussion boards. Prior to joining Cowart, Rhett was co-founder and president of Viridian, a food waste recycling company processing over 2,000 tons per week across 15 states. So Rhett, tell us about what's going on with Cowart Mulch. Rhett, I think you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Gloria, and thank you everyone for being here today. And I'm excited about telling you a little bit about what Cowart Mulch is doing regarding compost manufacturing. So let me just see if I can advance the slide. There we go. So, you know, just as the benchmark, this is some data that's about 5 years old, but this is one of the driving forces that cause us to really want to be involved with food waste recycling. According to the EPA, nationally, about 38 million tons of food waste is generated each year. And this data is from about 2016, I think. Close to 30 million tons of that food waste went to landfill, about 76% going to landfill. 21% of that material, of the material going to landfill, of all the material going to landfill, 21% of it is food waste. So I think we can all agree that if we can have an impact on that, it will be better for all of us. Nobody wants more landfill. We have there's great value in the food waste, and that's what we see. And our goal is to take that value, that nutrient value, the energy value of that food waste, and turn it into something very useful. And that's what we're doing. So just a little bit about Cowart. Cowart's been in business in Georgia, starting in the Sugar Hill area in 1987 in the tree service business. In about 1998, Cowart began to create mulch and began to do mulch manufacturing. And then in 2010, as a natural byproduct of mulch, began to produce soil. This wasn't at that time composted. It was just soil as kind of a natural byproduct of all the wood that's being processed. There was some topsoil and stuff that would be generated. In the last 5 years, we've gotten into compost manufacturing. We have a strong distribution network with a strong manufacturing footprint. We operate now in Florida, throughout Georgia, in Tennessee, and we operate and we distribute products throughout the Southeast, and we also have bagging capabilities. And our mission is simply this: to lead the green recycling industry in the manufacturing of sustainable landscape products. And I believe next we're going to have a short video that someone else is going to play for us so we can hear it. So if you don't mind, this is just a 2-minute video to kind of show you a little bit about our operation. Okay, thank you for sharing the video. And let me go to the next slide here. Yeah, so this is, we have a lot of wood products, a lot of mulch and cypress mulch and even bark and so forth that, we just, millions and millions of tons per year that we produce and sell of the wood product, which brings me to my first point. As we began to get into the compost manufacturing business, it was very, very important for us to have a very good carbon source, because for, as most of you know, for every ton of food waste and organic material that we receive to create compost with, we need to have a couple of tons of carbon material. And for us, it's a natural fit because we manage so many tons of wood product throughout the Southeast. So it's very, very easy for us to do that. So that's the first thing that we're able to bring to the table to help us manage the compost manufacturing. Let me see, go to the next slide. There we go. So the other thing that we have is a strategic partnership with Earth Products and Wayne King Sr. Many of you know Wayne King. He's been around the industry for years and years in Georgia and nationally, and Cowart and Earth Products have done business together for many, many years. And when it comes to compost, we partnered and we've created our own branded product called Incredisoil. And what Earth Products really brings to the table is an extensive compost manufacturing knowledge and experience. They also bring a very keen understanding of soil engineering and application. And we combine that with what Cowart brings to the table, which is, really manufacturing capability. We have what you saw in the video, our bagging lines. We've got 6 fully automated bagging lines. We've got a broad operational footprint, a significant supply of carbon feedstock, and a huge distribution network. So bringing those two things together allowed us then to create the branded soil product called Incredisoil. And so we're super excited about that. And this is sort of what it looks like just from an operational standpoint. You saw some of these aspects in the video, but we have our manufacturing for operation is computer controlled. We can sit there you know, right there from that room and operate the whole entire yard. We do use windrow turners. We're in the process right now of doing a huge major upgrade to our Auburn facility, just from a capacity standpoint, and these are some examples of the branded potting soil, the Incredisoil, gardening soil, planting soil, and other various soil products that come through our compost manufacturing operation. And here are some examples of how these products are used. You know, working with Earth Products, and these are some of Earth Products, you know, applications of their compost and the Incredisoil product together, but in sports fields and things throughout Atlanta and the Atlanta area, World Congress Center, and we also did some work together with Earth Products on green roofs and things of this nature. So, you know, in a summary, let me just add this. My closing point is, if you have food waste that you need to get rid of, we would love to talk with you about collecting it. We do have the ability to haul, and we certainly need more feedstock. And also, if you need good organic compost, we have that as well. So there's my contact information along with Wayne King. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Rhett. Great overview. Kim, if we don't have any questions, I haven't gotten any information from you, so I'm going to move on and introduce our next speaker. Wayne Koeckeritz is an operator specialist for EcoProducts, covering the Southeast region. His role is to help implement zero waste programs, conduct waste audits and analysis, provide compostable product information, and connect haulers and composters with end users. Prior to joining EcoProducts in 2018, he was a food waste hauler for 6+ years in Charleston, South Carolina. Wayne also earned the Certified Composting Professional designation from the U.S. Composting Council in 2019 and currently serves on their Target Organics Committee as a young professional mentor. So Wayne, take it away.
Thanks, Gloria. Hello, everybody. Just wanted to talk to you about a different part of the pile today, and that's going to be the compostable food service packaging piece. And there's a lot of myths surrounding compostable packaging. It's great to see so many different layers of facilities and operators that are out there. Our goal really, though, is to help solve that problem of food waste. We're big proponents at EcoProducts of using reusables and washables, durables, everything, but we also understand that that's not always going to be the case, and it's not something that everybody can do. So there is a place for compostable food service packaging, and we just want to try to find that place and make sure that we can actually get it from the user into the composting pile. Go ahead to the next slide if we could. And so a couple of things we're going to talk about. So food service packaging, typically in the in your poly categories, your polystyrenes and polypropylenes, they're really challenging to recycle. Not only do a lot of facilities don't even want it if it's clean material, especially polystyrene, but the fact that it's going to be often contaminated with organic material makes it even more difficult, right? So we established that it's challenging even if it's clean material because not that many places take it. And then we look and we see post-consumer food service packaging is difficult because of the contamination, which ends up putting us at only 8% of plastic packaging truly getting recycled, which is pretty horrendous. So when we look at foam and cutlery and cups, all of those are the ones that are way down on the end of the scale that have access. And access does not equal actual recycling. Next slide, please. So if recycling the packaging is a problem, well, we also have the opposite, which is landfilling the food waste is a problem, right? And Rhett talked about this. I think everybody has talked about it. The EPA has talked about it forever. And that is we send way too much food to the landfills and we don't compost nearly enough. And those two graphs can signal it out right there. So it's pretty much in line with everybody's been saying. Next slide. No shortage here of opportunities to handle food waste. This was from Refed. But you'll see that the overwhelming solution, best solution, is composting. And so it doesn't mean that these other opportunities don't have value. They do. But we know that to really make a dent in the food waste, we've got to have centralized composting. We have to have greater access to that. Next slide, please. So when we put all of these things together, we say that compostable food service packaging is actually a really good solution. And why is that? And what is it? It's made from plants, plant-based resins, sugarcane, corn, bamboo. It's renewable. In the case of the bagasse material, it's actually reclaimed. So material that would have been destined to be burned or landfilled is actually reclaimed and turned into a usable product. These products are ASTM D6400 and 6868 compliant for compostability. And many of them are often designated with the BPI certified logo, so third-party certification. As those may or may not be familiar, BPI did change some of its standards at January 1st of this year with regards to added fluorine. So there's a whole host of products that lost their BPI certification. They are, however, still ASTM compliant. And so there's just some wording going on there. There's some fluorine issues. So most companies are working now on a no fluorine added component of their packaging. We have some that are out there as well. There's other companies that are doing the same thing. Next slide, please. So how does compostable food service packaging help? Well, it helps in the fact that what we're really trying to do and get to the pile is the food scraps. I was challenged years ago to people were talking about, well, your product really doesn't do anything for the pile. We'll talk a little bit about that on that next slide, but what I want to say right now is we're the vessel, right? It's about getting the really valuable nutrient-rich food waste, which is the hardest stuff to collect when you're at front of house. We saw a lot of back of house collections. That's much easier. It's a smaller number of staff. It's easier to collect. You don't have nearly as many of the moving parts and forks, knives, cups, plates, bowls, lids, straws, all of those things that a consumer would use in the front of the house. We also know that most consumers are not going to take the time to stand at a set of bins and scrape their food into one and then take their packaging and put it into another and then take recycling and put it somewhere else. Like, so it just, that's not how it works when we're trying to do front of house collections. And so the most successful way to do it is to eliminate as many steps as possible. So when we put the packaging together with the food scraps and make it all compostable, we get much higher collection with lower amounts of contamination. And I think if you talk to Jim and you talk to Rhett and you talk to anybody else in the world of composting, especially where post-consumer food scraps are involved, contamination continues to be the #1 challenge. Next slide, please. So another myth, does adding compostable packaging to your pile hurt it? And the answer is no. BioCycle, who I think we can all agree as well, is the go-to on these issues, did a 2018 study, so not too terribly long ago, that when you add significant levels of the food service packaging, it does not appear to change the quality either positively or negatively. It performs as traditional feedstocks would, and it doesn't take away or add to the nutrient value of the finished product. And those are really key things. So a lot of what I try to do in my daily role is to talk to compost manufacturers who are a little bit leery about taking packaging, and by sort of just using the science that's out there, we can at least start at this point here and demonstrate that there's no negative value to adding compostable packaging in there. Next slide. But it doesn't come without its challenges, and I want to be very upfront about that. That the certified organic compost for OMRI is not a fan at this time of the PLA. So any of the plastic containers, forks, straws, cold cups. So not suitable for use in OMRI. It does cost more than your traditional plastics. We do have contamination issues that we have to constantly worry about. And then also with regards to the lack of composting infrastructure that will take and process packaging. And those are all things that we're working on. BPI is working on trying to see if we can't get some OMRI certification for the use of compostable materials. Hopefully with more domestic production coming online, we can get our costs down. Contamination is obviously something we work on. And we're here talking to a couple of folks that are building out new infrastructure on a yearly basis, and that are packaging friendly at this point. So we want to keep that relationship solid. Next slide. The overall message I really want to drive is that what is the perfect solution, and it really comes down to being a system solution. That at every touch point along the way, you've got to have some visual identifier so everybody knows that they're using the right product. You could just as easily take our logo off that cup down there. If you want to put on a World Centric logo, if you want to put on somebody else's logo, right? We're all in this together in terms of solving the problem of food waste. I'm just fortunate enough to be able today to talk to you from an EcoProduct standpoint, but our competitors out there with compostable products, I think we would all agree that what you've got to do is get everybody on board. And where I have a tendency to dabble is over on the right-hand side with our haulers and composters. And we've got sales folks that are over there on the venue procurement side, and then in the middle we have the actual guests and facility operators. When I talk about a system solution is if you can identify at every step of the way that the cup or the fork or the plate is compostable, it makes it easy for the guest to put it into the right bin, makes it easy for the facility operator to collect and see if there is any contamination. When you're going to pick this up at a location, the hauler can put a quick set of eyes on it, make sure they see the right branding, they know that it's supposed to be in there. And then when that material gets taken to the actual processing facility, the composter can also see, once it gets dumped in the yard, that all of the products belong in there and they know that it works. This is how we help. This is how we reduce contamination across the way. So next slide. It's going to go into Brightmark. So I want to just really talk a little bit about the whole use of compostables, that they are a useful and I believe necessary piece in some aspects. In some operations, it's not to be used everywhere. Again, we'd love to see more washables and durables. As it relates to COVID, we have certainly seen some drop off in the use at colleges and universities as they left, but as they came back, there was actually a greater demand for using compostables, and so it's been a very interesting marketplace. Obviously, we deal more towards commercial, large college, university, and corporate campuses and dining facilities there. So as it relates to COVID, it has not been a good year for compostable food service packaging companies, but we do see a rebound. We'll probably be one of the last to recover. but it does have its place, and we certainly want to be out there leading the way with waste diversion. That ultimately is my role. I'm not out here to sell products. I'm really out here to make sure the products that do get sold end up there in the compost pile. Otherwise, we're no better than anybody else's products that end up in the landfill. So we've got to make sure we keep it out of there and get it all the way down to our friends at Incredisoil and Atlas and others as well. So with that, we'll pass it on.
Great, thank you so much, Wayne. And now we're going to move on to a different process. And we have our speaker, Clarke Pauley, who's Vice President of Project Origination at Brightmark, which is a national waste to energy project developer based out of San Francisco, California. Clarke is responsible for sourcing and early stage development of renewable natural gas projects nationwide, with experience in developing both dairy and municipal organic waste anaerobic digestion projects. He's experienced in marketing and sales of biomethane, carbon credits, organic soil products from anaerobic digestion. Clarke has a diverse background in the renewable energy, environmental science, marketing, and business development. So Clarke, it's all yours.
Thank you, Gloria. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, great. Well, I'm honored as a left coaster and crazy California certifiable to be included in this wonderful group of Southeast folks and Georgia-based folks, especially. Super honored to be included with your esteemed group here. And wow, what a group! I've had this benefit of batting cleanup here and hearing all the great things that are going on in the Southeast in organics recycling. So I'm really encouraged as a Californian and cutting my teeth in a sizable regional anaerobic digester project in Southern California. Prior to joining Brightmark, I know how excited we are about organics recycling legislation and regulation that's driving good decision making, but seems like you folks in the Southeast are just kind of doing a lot of this on your own. And so it's just so great to hear, even from Cesar, what's going on with the EPA regulations. It's going to drive some good decision making. I'm very encouraged by that. With the EPA 50% goal and the roadmap, very encouraging to hear about that. Gloria, I love what you're doing at the community scale in Atlanta area. It's definitely a part of the all of the above strategy that we need to encourage organics recycling at all different levels. And Natasha, I'm sorry, that was more Natasha and Gloria. I know you're driving the boat in Gloria in Georgia as well. And then, Jim, we need to talk because this is exciting how many facilities you have going on, because I think there's definitely some opportunities that I'll talk about anaerobic digestion going in conjunction with composting. So I think that's super encouraging that you have those facilities that you're all building out. And Rhett, great to see that the trommels are turning in the Southeast there. Always love to see that, and making good use of the end products and making quality soil products, which is I think a huge goal for us to achieve. And Wayne working from the other sort of standpoint of getting source reduction and compostable packaging to help everybody in getting all this stuff out of the landfill and or reducing the volume of what goes into the landfill or compost pile. So super, again, honored that we're here today, and I was invited to join you, but I'm Vice President of Origination at Brightmark, and Brightmark is a company about 4 years old, based in San Francisco. We have a very simple mission, and we're working to create a world without waste. I'm gonna just take my camera off so you guys can see the slides better. So very simple, we're looking for different strategies everywhere to reduce waste and create a world without waste. Our two main divisions thus far have been a plastics renewal division, and we have a sizable plant in Ashley, Indiana that we are commissioning right now that can take all different types of plastic from 1s to 7s and do a pyrolysis system on that material and turn it into a high quality drop-in fuel replacement, diesel fuel. We can also make jet fuel with that material, and so we're excited to get that project off the ground because we feel like we are developing a closed loop recycling solution domestically here for plastic waste, and we have a plan to roll out several of these facilities across the country, including we have shortlisted several facilities down there in the Southeast, Florida, Georgia, So stay tuned. We hopefully will have an announcement soon on some new facilities in that plastics renewal division to get that part of the recycling solution kind of nailed down. The other division that I'm more involved with is slightly less sexy, but still fun, is the renewable natural gas division. So we source organic waste, and thus far we've been working mainly on dairy anaerobic digestion of dairy waste. We have about 20 projects across the country, 6 that have been recently finished up, and maybe 25 in our development pipeline. And so we're excited to do that, and then we're expanding upon that. This next year, we'll be exploring at least 5 or 6 food waste renewable natural gas opportunities, and all across the country. So we're excited to kind of expand our portfolio of development projects in more food waste and organic waste anaerobic digestion. And also, now that we have maybe a change at the EPA, we're hoping that we can get some of the issues solved with respect to co-digestion opportunities, where we can take organic waste at dairies and put them back into those organic waste back in to produce more gas. And there's going to be a mechanism, we hope, that will be provided for us in this next EPA administration. So I think we've already heard the stats here. I'm preaching to the choir, but I think this is the interesting challenge that we have. About 40% of all food produced in the U.S. is wasted, but here's the opportunity for all of us is, what can we do with that by diverting it from the landfill and turning it into useful products? And in this case, we're not only able to capture the energy value of the products or the nutritional value of the products as a soil nutrient and a soil amendment, but by doing anaerobic digestion, we're able to also capture the energy value of all that food waste. So, and then we see here that food waste is responsible for at least 11% of methane emissions generated from landfills, and that's the equivalent of about 3.4 million vehicles. So that's not insignificant at all, and we're excited to be able to tap into this last sort of frontier of recycling, which is the organics piece. So you can see that some of the states that we've been targeting already have organics and food waste diversion laws. And there's a cluster on the West Coast, or really all of the West Coast. California, Oregon, and Washington have various forms of organics diversion policy that allows us to tap into the ability to that regulation itself it allows us to drive good decision making, because it will tend to force the issue in the sense that businesses are forced to come up with solutions for their organics recycling, and then that can drive the sort of the overall chain of value that can go down the range. Whoops, I need to not use my mouse here. Hang on one second. Okay, so as we know, we've already talked about this, but 34% roughly, we call this organics with should be a lowercase o, not organic, but we tend to call the mixed yard waste plus food waste as the organic fraction of what's going into landfills, and that's about 18 to 20%. It varies across the country, but roughly just call it 20% of that is food waste, and then the rest is still very good, either compostable or anaerobically digestible product that can be pulled out of the landfill. And if you really want to look at the cities and the states that are going for zero waste mandates, this is really, you have to get after this 30%, roughly 35% of what's going into the landfills in order to make a dent in that. And so that's the last frontier for recycling, and I'm excited that we're all kind of a part of that overall, all of the above strategy. Let's see, I tried to do there we go. Okay. So I think we all know generally how anaerobic digestion works, but in this case, we can either have on the left there, we have either farm waste, or it could be a mixture of manure plus food waste from any setting, and we would have some separation. If it's food waste, a facility to separate it, or the material can come in already separated, but that's really good substrate, not only to build a compost pile in the right proportions, but also you can put it into an in-vessel composter, which is essentially what an anaerobic digester is. So then you go over to step 2 here, and the waste in an anaerobic environment is sealed up so that the microorganisms, which literally are like the same things that all the microorganisms that are inside a cow's belly, they turn that substrate into a mixture of methane and CO2. We're able to take that mixture of CO2 and methane and strip off the CO2, and then what we're left with is basically pure biomethane, and we can get that to very high purity, up to 99% plus purity of biomethane. That's even cleaner than what would be coming out of your natural gas pipeline, so in terms of more methane. And this is all from recently decomposed material, so therefore, you know, it's the stuff that's no longer coming out of the landfill and into the atmosphere. We're able to capture it into a closed system, and then you have some options. You can either turn a generator to make renewable electricity, or you can take that and put it into a pipeline, that biomethane, and you can put it into a CNG vehicle, and that is a drop-in replacement fuel for a CNG vehicle. So that tends to be the project. We found that in our case that in our estimation, the value chain is the highest for putting it into the pipeline and burning it as a vehicle fuel. And we're encouraged to see that adoption of more and more CNG vehicles across the country, all the way back into California, sometimes where the fuel is sold, because there's a very large fleet of CNG vehicles in Southern California. So the other piece of that, though, is that we are not losing the nutrients. So the soil nutrients are coming out the back end. And depending on what type of anaerobic digestion you're using, you can have either more of more liquids and less solids, or you can actually have more of an in-vessel composting system where your nutrients coming out the back end will look very much just like a compost that might need just a little bit of aerobic stabilization before it is turned into a finished soil product. So what's the general gist as a developer? We're a project developer. We're really focused on the triple bottom line. First of all, we need to make sure it's right for the planet, it's right for the people, and it's also economically viable. So how do we get there with anaerobic digestion as part of the all of the above strategy? Well, first of all, we need to have some economics for a tip fee. So the tip fee, as we all know, is the amount that doing any kind of a process, whether it be anaerobic digestion or composting, it's an expensive process. So part of the economics have to work. You have to have a viable tip fee that to make it work. The other piece is the offtake. In our case, we have offtake agreements for our gas, and this could be gas or electricity. In our case, we take our gas, and we have to have a good opportunity to be able to sell the gas and possibly some environmental attributes that are tied to the gas, such as RIN credits and LCFS credits in California. And then the other big question mark is on the soil product side, but I'm encouraged to see so much activity in the Southeast. In your pro forma, oftentimes people may overinflate the value of the soil products, but in reality, I think that is the question mark that we can work together to try to create viable and valuable soil products from the co-products that come out of the digester. As I said before, it can be anything from more of a compost-like high solid product, or it can be more of a liquid product, or in reality, probably a mixture of both together. So there is opportunity there, but that always tends to be the question mark, because as we know that organics recycling is very much a very regional business, right? So with that, so what are some of the opportunities? Where would we like to see these facilities located? Well, one opportunity would be at a landfill. An existing landfill may have some stranded gas, gas that's off-gassing from the landfill. If they're flaring that gas to destroy the methane, we could commingle the gas streams, keep them accounted for separately, build an anaerobic digestion facility at a location that's already used to having some odors and noise and truck traffic. So this really is a great solution to sort of take some existing gas that may be underutilized, combine it with some gas that we're able to make from anaerobic digestion, and that's a very ideal situation for us to look at as far as a viable project site. Same idea here at an existing material recovery facility. Any waste hauler or anybody has a material recovery facility, if we can tack on to the side of get a 5-6 acre piece of land possibly to tack onto the side of a material recovery facility. They already have the infrastructure in there, the permitting for those, again, types of more noisy and maybe odoriferous waste coming in. And so we're able to do the same idea, but perhaps have access to a tipping floor or build our own that we can do the right amount of separation to get rid of the contamination out of any food waste coming in. And so then there's an opportunity to, then if you see the picture on the bottom here, this is Pointe Hills landfill or a material recovery facility where they're actually turning this into, by going into a food separator and turning it into a pumpable slurry. And then that pumpable slurry is a great substrate for anaerobic digestion. So then same idea at a compost facility. Compost facilities sometimes have the benefit of a little bit of extra land, but I think sometimes, I'm sure some of you composters can attest, that to get your right balance of food to carbon correct, sometimes it might be even easier, so you don't have to worry about any sort of vermin and other challenges you have by adding a lot of food waste coming into the site. It might be easier just to keep the existing operations going, build an anaerobic digestion facility right next to or possibly on the composting site, run at least some of the material in the right proportions through the anaerobic digester, and then the soil co-products coming out the back end can be put back into the composting operation in the right proportions to create good soil products. So that's another ideal situation where we can not only capture the value of the compost and mulch, but we can also get the energy value along the way as well. So those are some real-time strategies and locations how anaerobic digestion can be rolled out. And ideally, there's certainly others, but I think those are some really low-hanging fruit for us and opportunities we're actively looking for. So again, back to what we need for this to work. We need a tip fee, we need an offtake, and then we need some valuable soil products on the back end if possible. So we've been focusing on, where's the tip fees? So up to this date, we see that there's a cluster in the Northeast and in the Pacific, the Northeast cluster of the New England states. You can see just the price per ton, the average tip fees are much higher in those areas. So that just gives you that much more room to work with in terms of building a viable project. So we've been focusing on that. And not that this is a scorecard or anything, but we do have lower tip fees here. I know this is very regional, and this is just an overall average in the Southeast. But you can see here we have, Georgia, the average is about $49, let's call it, per ton of tip fee. And you can compare that to an average, say, in the Pacific region of more like $73. So that's just something that we need to think about, and good policy can sometimes drive that decision, because the decision making becomes more focused on diversion of the organics, and then that allows for the tip fees to jump up into the state where we need to have them in order to make some of these projects viable. So just back to some of the other opportunities for monetizing the gas. I just wanted to kind of touch on this just to show you the value chain that can be created in these the gas with combining the gas, if you're selling it as a vehicle fuel, into CNG vehicles. This is this axis here is $1 per diesel gallon equivalent displaced. So this is dollars per gallon essentially. You can see the kind of value you can create here. You already have a commodity value of the gas, but then on top of that, you're able to generate, in the case of food waste, we would get roughly a 30 cent per gallon adder to the value of the essentially a diesel gallon equivalent of fuel. And if you sell it into the California market with the LCFS credits, you can get all the way back up here to over $4 per gallon. So you can see that these adders add quite a bit, and what they're really doing is they're taking into account the real actual cost of recycling and the actual cost of carbon, and that's been, the LCFS program has been super successful for the state of California. So those types of programs, perhaps nationally or regionally, would be super valuable to allow us to monetize and account for the actual true cost of the carbon emissions. And those are also very useful in seeding the ability for us to build more of these projects so we can get more and more organics diverted over time. So that's all I had. Again, I'm honored to be in with everybody here, and I'm excited about what you all are up to in the Southeast, and we want to get more and more engaged. We're very actively looking for projects in your area, so let's talk. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Clarke. Kim, do you have a couple of questions maybe, or one that we might pose?
Oh, there are questions for everybody, and so I was thinking we might just skip to the question session and just start asking questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so first question will be to Rhett. Does the carbon source wood product need to be processed before being added to the organic material? If so, how are you doing that?
Let me turn my, very good question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, we do process the carbon. We grind the carbon up initially, and so we mix ground carbon and wood fines with the organic material. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. I have a quick question myself, just a curiosity. During some of the Atlanta community composting discussions that we had with Foodwell Alliance, one of the biggest barriers to expanding composting was not having a bagging operation. And you all have a bagging operation. I don't know if you've thought about or been open to potentially other smaller scale composters being able to utilize that.
Mm-hmm. You know, we do bagging for other companies, so we would be completely open to that. So if we need to explore that offline, we would be open to doing that. So I'll just leave it at that. We have 6 fully automated bagging lines and a huge amount of capacity and a huge amount of experience and capability there.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, should we pull up the whole panel now? Let's see all their pretty faces. Everybody join Rhett, and that way we can see you all and then throw questions out. So question for Jim. Do your residential, commercial, and industrial collection streams overlap, or are they treated as separate processes? Has your company aligned with any renewable energy firms?
Sure. So yes, they do overlap. So our, as I mentioned, in the upstate of South Carolina, currently that's the only spot where well, I shouldn't say only spot. That's the place where we're fully vertically integrated. So we do have the hauling from both the residential side and the commercial side and the industrial side all coming into that facility. In our other locations, we're in Durham. It is strictly what's coming in to the facility at Durham from the, I mean, a lot of private landscapers and folks like that are bringing carbon into the area, so they're paying tip fees and things like that, and then we're paid to process the waste, and then of course, like I mentioned in phase 2 on the biosolids side, that's obviously generated as well by the city, and so those are our feedstocks there. The long term, I would dare to say phase 3, the plan is to have some commingled yard waste and food waste coming into Durham. We're not there yet, but we're looking forward to that. And then same thing sort of in Florida. We're looking at, we're currently working on industrial to bring industrial in. So that would be something that we would be involved on the hauling side of that. So all of that to say, it's a mixed bag, but yes, there is absolute overlap where you can be vertically integrated and where it makes sense to be vertically integrated. Do so when you have partners that are better suited to bring you the waste, then do that. And so that's what I think. You have a lot of smaller composters or food waste diversion companies that hopefully we can serve in the future. We're happy to work with the Compost Nows and the whomever in whatever market, even if as we look at San Antonio has 340,000 customers, and they do commingled yard waste and food waste. So we'll be looking at that as sort of a new part of our project. Currently, we are not working with any other renewable energy companies at our facilities. So I think as these things grow, I mean, good Lord, it's changed so much in the past 4.5 years. I just only expect the, just a massive continuous of the expansion of how we tackle these issues. Everybody here has talked about and deals with, knows this stuff every day. So I can only imagine it's going to be a lot of collaborative effort.
Thank you, Jim.
Not yet, Jim. We're going to talk.
Next question is for Natasha. What are the unique challenges facing the Atlanta segment of the Food Matters Initiative as opposed to the other regional cohort cities?
You're muted, Natasha.
Gosh, I think we just need more will from the top for some of this stuff. I think to even be accepted to work on this Southeast Regional Initiative, we had to have buy-in from the top, so we had to apply. Because even though we'd been working with NRDC for the 2 years before to map all of our wasted food, to even get into this cohort, we actually had to apply, meaning they wanted some, I guess, a public-facing buy-in from the top. So our mayor had to actually go in and say the city's going to start working on food waste. But I think just getting food waste elevated into, I think, dead center, like our food access plan and definitely part of our climate plan. I think that's what I want to see more of, is that people really getting the connection between food waste and the environmental impacts and the added benefit of putting it back in our soil to make healthier food, and actually using some of that compost to draw carbon back into the soil now. So I think that's the real, I think that's the little piece that tends to be missing, because I think food waste is finally, it's front and center for a lot of people, but I think there are other regions of the nation where they know a lot of this stuff already, or it's already been kind of front and center. So I'm just really looking for that to be elevated, that people kind of really connect food waste and climate, and connect food waste with food and carbon and drawdown and all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm waiting for. And then then we can create some policies, right, that kind of start to mandate food waste diversion from landfill, not just as a feel-good piece of work we're doing, but actually truly as it's got to be out landfill. It doesn't belong there. We're wasting energy and water, and so much of our natural resources go into creating food just to put in the ground. And so I think once we start to see more of that being front and center, and people and our elected officials, our higher ups, kind of really noticing that, I think this movement will catapult. I think because we're already there. We're already working on some of this stuff, so I just can't wait till it gets a lot more of that gusto from behind, some wind in our sails, or pushing us forward. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Wayne, I have to choose because there's several good ones. Yeah. Do you provide any kind of initial information or training to venues and facilities on how to best implement compostable products and avoid contamination?
Yes. Next question. No, you said a lot. No, that is exactly what I do. I'm really out there as an educator, facilitator, all of those things. And so we provide training materials. This is all sort of in the bundle. What we talk about with EcoProducts is that it's not just we're going to sell you the bowl, right? We're going to provide you with educational materials, training for your back of house staff. We can do signage and poster pieces and table tents. We've got videos as well that help with training for both back of house staff, front of house staff. It's a complete package when you look at waste diversion when you're trying to do front of house. It's just you can't just drop a plate on the table and expect it to end up in the compost pile. There's just too many steps along the way. There's too many players and too many things just to leave to chance. We will even help on the beginning and the front side of that with sort of waste characterization studies and waste audits as well. So I told you I live on the loading dock. I live in the compost pile. That's where I have the most fun in life, and so that's what we do. Yes, it is a complete bundle package.
So clarification question for those who might not be as familiar. The fluorine, where does that contamination come from? And what are you all doing in that area?
So as far as fluorine, so there's an additive that had been, approved by the FDA years ago. It was people have heard it referred to as PFAS. We've seen the articles that, Whole Foods was trying to kill you with their salad bowl and, all those things. It's a little bit, when you look at the science, long chain, short chain, PFAS, it doesn't really matter. Once it's in the public perception that this stuff is really bad, then that's where it's at. So BPI said we're going to set a top limit of fluorine at 100 parts per million. And if you can't meet that, you're not going to be BPI certified anymore. So January 1st, it's not as though this whole slate of products was no longer compostable. Nothing changed. The science is still there. They are still 100% compostable. It's just that they no longer met the new standard for BPI. So there's a new line of products that are called no fluorine added products. Here's the challenge. They don't perform as well and they cost more money. So how's that for a sales pitch, right? So I got something that costs more and it doesn't work as well. How many would you like? So it's early in its infancy of creating those. They will get better. And hopefully the cost will come down as well. So, but that's really the process of which the PFAS products have sort of come into disfavor. They'll eventually all be phased out. There's no question about it. We've got our legacy sugarcane products. We're going to see more and more of those. That just gets phased out. It's hard to take a regional approach to this. You've got some PFAS bans in the Northeast and the Northwest and the Midwest. And so eventually we're just, to eliminate having so many different SKUs, we're just going to all finally get to that point where nothing has got any added fluorine to it.
Great. Thank you, Wayne. And Clarke, for you, what's the range of anaerobic digestion project sizes which you take on? Are there any existing regulations in states which inhibit your types of projects?
Yeah, so our ideal size is if we're going to look at tons per day coming into a facility, I think we would probably be looking at a minimum of about maybe 100, 150 tons per day, ability to sort of get that amount of material depending on what the actual material is, the mix of it. So that would be kind of a minimum. In terms of size that we typically might need for a facility, depends on if we have a separation technology attached to it, or if we're just getting material coming in already previously separated, like in tanker trucks. So if we do have the organics receiving facility where we're doing separation to get packaging materials and contamination out, I'd say it'd be about a 5-6 acre site, and can be smaller if maybe a couple acres smaller if we don't need the advanced separation on the front end. And then the last part was, the regulations. I would say it's kind of the opposite. It's more what regulations, what states are driving the organics diversion is really probably more of a factor than it being an inhibitive. I don't think there's any states that really would shy away that I'm aware of yet that would or they'd say, hey, don't park your anaerobic digester here. That's very much of a local argument, kind of a NIMBY argument to be made sometimes, but not at a state level. So it's very regional, just as we know composting is a very regional activity. Just the same thing with siting a anaerobic digestion facility. It all comes down to getting the buy-in of your community and making sure everybody's on board before you pull the trigger on the project.
Great. How are we doing on time? Any of our timekeepers?
I think we're about out of time. So I want to say, as one of the co-hosts of this, I think it's obvious to say that there's great opportunity in the organics recycling and composting sectors. So we just need to keep working hard at this. We want to thank our speakers, obviously, for their time, their expertise, and for all the preparation time that we had in putting together this webinar. Thank the staff at EPA Region 4. They were great, and their contractor, Skia, who helped us through all the technology of this also virtual world that we're now in. and thank the participants for being here today. We all saw there are many approaches, all of them are important. We just need to keep our nose to the grind and keep this organics recycling movement going. I think after the webinar, as we close out, there will be a short survey and we would appreciate your participation. It also looks like we're going to be emailing you some documents as follow-up as participants. And we want you to stay tuned. This is one in a series that Georgia Recycling Coalition will be doing in materials management. Today we started obviously with organics. We're also going to be looking at textiles and at electronics in our next 2 sessions. So stay in touch. Everybody have a happy holiday and thank you again.